All right, good evening, everybody. This is the Fantasy Sports Boss with another live stream here on Wednesday. I wasn't originally planning to do a stream, but I figured with all of the injury news, and there's a lot of it to get to today, that I thought it would be a good idea to share whether I'm concerned or whether I'm not concerned in terms of the injury watch heading into week 2. Of course, begins tomorrow night with the potential shootout, AFC West shootout between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers, of course, without Keenan Allen, as the Chargers are going to go in a little bit shorthanded, but they have good depth with Joshua Palmer and DeAndre Carter, so I think they're going to be fine. But I'm going to get to that game later and give you my thoughts on who I think you should start or sit. If you're new to the stream, you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe and notification button. Started this about a month ago, and we're closing in on 350 subscribers, which is great. Been sharing strategy videos, injury update videos, features like Crisis Point, all that good stuff, plus the live streams. The next one will probably be the Football Friday stream around 5 or 6 o'clock, where, again, post your questions in the chat, anything you want me to answer. You know, the Alan Lazard, trade for Alan Lazard video really kind of took off, and a lot of people took my advice on that one. I did it myself. I traded Melvin Gordon for Alan Lazard because I think Lazard's stock is just going to go up, especially after Rodgers grew increasingly frustrated with the receivers that he had at his disposal in week 1. Then I also said to trade for Mike Williams because he's going to go nuclear tomorrow. That first game was definitely a bummer. It was, a very nondescript game for Williams, but anybody who knows Mike Williams knows that he goes hot and cold week to week. This is what you sign up for. Yes, there was thought that he could take over the number 1 role from Keenan Allen. But even based on how the first half was going before Allen got hurt, Allen's still the top dog for Justin Herbert. So, again, post your comments in the chat. Post your questions in the chat. I'll answer them as we go along. And so what I wanted to do today is really just chime in on all of the injury reports. And there's some big names that appeared, especially at running back, which had me a little bit nervous because I have skin on the first guy we're going to talk about here, and that's Leonard Fournette. He was limited during Wednesday's practice due to a hamstring. So this was overlooked by many, including myself. His last carry of the game against the Dallas Cowboys, and of course the big story coming out of that was Dak Prescott, suffering the break to his hand there. That's going to have him sidelined anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, depending on who you believe, i.e. Jerry Jones, who's not a doctor, by the way. But Fournette on his last carry kind of winced, clutched at his hamstring a little bit. Not a lot of chatter around it, but he was limited in practice today. And we know that Leonard Fournette has a history of injuries. He misses games every year, even going back to when he was with LSU. Durability is not a strength for Fournette. Now, he was awesome week 1. I double-dipped on him in both of my leagues. There was a lot of anti-Fournette sentiment, if you will, in the fantasy football community. I don't think all of it had to do with the weight, the nonsense with his weight, because he was fine, ran for well over 100 yards against Dallas in week 1, and is a supreme receiver, one of the best receiving backs in the league. And so much for Rachaad White, eating into his carries and dialing back the Fournette workload. As long as Tom Brady is on this team, Fournette's going to be out there. But anyway, I digress. This bears watching. I'm somewhat concerned. So I said for each guy, I'm going to tell you if I'm concerned or not. This one, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm somewhat concerned because the fact that he got in a limited practice today is a good sign. For me, knowing Fournette's history, I did draft Rachaad White in both of my leagues. So I took Fournette in the second round in both, and then I made sure I backed him up at Rachaad White in case any injury befell Fournette, and he's already battling a hamstring. But I think he'll play. But if you pick up Rachaad White, and by the way, if you haven't seen the handcuff video, I did it last week, and I told you to pick up Khalil Herbert and pick up Jeff Wilson. Look how that turned out. Make sure you watch that video. I posted it earlier today, the strategy of who to pick up when the games are taking place. Starting tomorrow, you got to pick up Isaiah Pacheco if he's available in case something happens to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If Edwards-Helaire makes it through the game, no problem. Then you drop Pacheco and you move on to the next guy all the way through the 4 o'clock games when Eno Benjamin is going to be a guy that you should pick up as well. So Rachaad White, you should definitely have on your roster if you are a Fournette owner. All right, so Damian Williams didn't practice with the ribs. That he was one of the first names to go out injured. It really put in motion Cordell Patterson's monster game. And, Patterson was one of the bigger offensive performers in week 1. Now, I also did a video on Patterson earlier today where I told you to sell high, and I don't think we're going to have a better game than what we saw out of Patterson in week 1. They want to get Williams involved. They want to get Allgeier involved. The fact that he was able to return from the ribs is a good thing. So I think maybe they're just being proactive, and I think Williams will be back in there. And honestly, when Williams before he suffered the rib injury, he was out there in the backfield for 7 of 10 snaps. Patterson only 2, and then there was an empty backfield with 1, which I pointed out in that video. So if Williams plays, Patterson's a flex. If he doesn't, Patterson's a running back too. All right, Jameis Winston was limited with a back. He went in a tent briefly Sunday. Thought it might have been a shoulder, but it turns out it was a back issue. But Winston played through it. He's tough as nails. He's not going to miss this game. And honestly, if you were a Dak Prescott owner, this is the guy who should be at the top of the list. Now, I'm assuming that Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr are already picked in your league. Winston probably has a good chance of being on your waiver wire. You should have been very aggressive on him. This is potentially a very potent passing attack with Jarvis Landry, the rookie Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, who, my God, he went crazy in the second half with the 2 touchdowns. Taysom Hill being used all over the field, and I picked up Taysom Hill in one of my leagues because of the tight end eligibility. And not to mention Alvin Kamara coming out of the backfield. So Winston's going to be fine this week. I think he's well worth using, especially in super flex leagues. And if you're a Dak Prescott owner, that's the guy that I would trust there to hold down the fort until Prescott gets back. And speaking of Prescott, Jerry Jones shouldn't be giving his opinion, first of all, about how soon Prescott's going to get back. Jones says he could be back in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever he said. Honestly, even if he does come back, you can't use him right away. Russell Wilson came back from a thumb injury last year. He looked like shit the first, 2 or 3 games, and then he started to find his mojo. First of all, I want no part of this Dallas offense. The offensive line is a joke. It was very arrogant of the Dallas Cowboys the way they handled this offseason. They didn't address the line. They kept Ezekiel Elliott around. I know the contract's absorbent, but you really want to turn things over to Tony Pollard, who was hardly used in week 1. It was very arrogant of the Dallas front office, the way they handled the offensive line during the offseason. And now they're paying for it, and now they don't have their quarterback. And CeeDee Lamb is absolutely screwed, including his fantasy football owners, until Prescott gets back. All right, Julio Jones did not practice Wednesday. This is something I am concerned about because of his knee. And the reason why I'm concerned is because this is the MO with Julio Jones. He's week to week, game to game, every week. And this is why he wore out his welcome in Atlanta, not to mention the decreased production. And it would really be a lost opportunity since Chris Godwin is not going to play this week, maybe not play next week as well, because stupidly he was out there and he injured his hamstring when he shouldn't have even been out there in the first place. Russell Gage also did not practice. Neither did Mike Evans. So it's probably just maintenance day for the Tampa Bay wideouts. So I'm not overly concerned about this, but I'm not concerned about Mike Evans because Mike Evans always plays through injuries. Russell Gage too. I don't think this is much of an issue for him as well, but Julio Jones, he's old. He's older. I wouldn't say he's old, but he's older. He's been battling injuries a lot the last couple of years, and this is something that bears watching. If Julio Jones sits out, then I'm very aggressive on Russell Gage. If he somehow slipped through waivers, Russell Gage, you got to go out and pick him up because there's going to be a lot of targets coming his way if Julio Jones doesn't play. All right, Connor wants to know T. Higgins or Michael Thomas for PPR. That's pretty tight. I'm going to have to go T. Higgins against Dallas. I like Michael Thomas. He obviously went crazy last week, but, Winston's a little bit banged up. We all know that Higgins can take the top off any defense, whereas Michael Thomas is more of a possession guy. It's very close. You really can't go wrong with either guy, but I would go T. Higgins. And speaking of T. Higgins, it looks like he's going to be able to play this week. The concussion he suffered apparently wasn't very severe. It was more out of precaution that they didn't let him come back since it was the season opener. So I think that Higgins is going to be fine, and I'm a Higgins owner as well. So I was able to survive Higgins' absence by winning my league, but I think he'll be back this week. So I would ride with Higgins over Michael Thomas. All right, Joe wants to know, would you start Taysom Hill over Ertz? I picked up Hill over your recommendation. Thanks. Listen, I was totally in on Taysom Hill leading up to week 1. Got ripped apart in the comments. I had to delete a whole bunch of comments on that Taysom Hill video because of the attacks that I was getting. You don't know what you're talking about. That he's just a bit player and he Dalton's a backup quarterback, all this nonsense. Listen, he's going to be a factor. And the fact that it worked as well as it did, Hill with the big run, the 50-plus yard run, and then he scores a touchdown, and then he catches a pass, it worked. So the Dennis Allen is going to continue to go back to that. So, Ertz is still banged up. He did not practice today. the only issue I have with Taysom Hill is that his snap count wasn't high. It was only in the 20%. I think it was like 27% or something like that. So it's not a high snap count, whereas Zach Ertz will be out there on pretty much every down if he does play. So I would say if Ertz plays, I would still go with Ertz. I just want to get more evidence. This is not me hedging and going against what I said. I do like Ertz as well. But I want to see that Hill is going to get more snaps going forward. It could be because Alvin Kamara was a little bit banged up. That's why Hill was in there. If Kamara is good to go and 100% healthy, I do want to see if Hill's going to get that amount of snap share that he did. I'd like to see it more into the 30s before I trust him. All right, Cam's asking me Drake London or Valdez Scantling. Oh, Drake London, easy. Listen, the story on MVS hasn't changed. He's an all-or-nothing guy. I think Sky Moore eventually is going to nudge him aside. I think Macaulay Hardman and MVS are going to be knocked down a rug eventually when Sky Moore is fully integrated in the offense. And then you have Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster, who are ahead of MVS on the depth chart. Drake London did some nice things last week. Kyle Pitts is getting double teamed on every snap. So London is going to continue to benefit from the double teams of Kyle Pitts. All right. I love the questions, guys. This is great. What do you think about Michael Carter versus Hunter Renfrow in the flex? The Jets are just a horrible, horrible team. I would still go Hunter Renfrow. There's going to be a lot of passing. I think it was overreaction about Hunter Renfrow being swallowed up, and I talked about yesterday by Devontae Adams and Darren Waller. I do like Michael Carter a lot, but they are going to get Breece Hall involved. It's going to be about a 50 split, whereas Renfrow is going to be out there on every snap. And remember this, Josh McDaniels' offense has PPR slot receivers that catch a lot of passes, and that's where Renfrow comes in. So I would go with Renfrow. I think he's going to bounce back. And McDaniels knows that he's got to get him more involved. So I think there's going to be a concerted effort to get Renfrow more involved. All right, Steven Drakes wants to know, would you start Palmer tomorrow? Also, would you play Williams even if Swift plays? So I'm assuming if it's either between Mike Williams and Swift, it's going to be a tough call because Swift, he missed practice today. I think Swift will be fine. I would play Deandre Swift over Mike Williams easily. And I assume the Palmer question is a separate question having nothing to do with Williams and Swift. I would start Palmer tomorrow if you need a flex guy or if you need a third wideout. I think Palmer's going to be fine. Listen, he ran the second most routes yesterday. I know DeAndre Carter, everybody's talking about the catches that he had, and Carter's going to be in the slot and he's going to be a factor, but Josh Palmer ran the highest amount of snaps behind Williams last week. And we've seen when Keenan Allen has missed time in the past that Palmer has been heavily involved. So I would start Palmer. All right, Joe wants to know, I have Goddard, so my tight ends are Goddard, Ertz, and Taysom Hill. Who would you start out of the three? That's a tough one. I don't like Goddard for the fact that the Eagles just don't throw it enough, and it's going to be all A.J. Brown, I think. And also they're going to want to get Devontae Smith more involved. I think Goddard is, even though last week Smith didn't have any targets, I think he's the third option. So in Ertz and Taysom Hill. Like I talked about Taysom Hill earlier, I just want to see with a fully healthy Kamara, because I think Hill played more than anticipated because Kamara was banged up. So I would go with Ertz if he plays. I think, with DeAndre Hopkins out, with Rondale Moore out, with Marquise Brown disappointing last week, really, he kind of bombed out trying to get himself integrated in the offense. I would go with Ertz over those two. All right, Extreme Kane, choose two from my flex. Zach Moss, Mostert, Cedric Wilson, Tony, Kenyon Drake, Jaylen Warren. Boy, this must be a really deep league. This is not a great list to choose from. I'm not going to go Mostert because the Dolphins are going to be down 2 tackles. Terron Armstead's not going to play, it looks like. So they're going to be down 2 tackles against a ferocious Baltimore Ravens defense. So they're not going to get any running room at all. So I wouldn't start him. Cedric Wilson. I don't like Cedric Wilson. Kadarius Toney is in the doghouse. He's not being used by the Giants. Kenyon Drake, they're going to get J.K. Dobbins back. Boy, this Extreme Kane, this is a terrible list. I'd have to say Zach Moss. And almost by default, I'm going to have to say Mostert, even after I just said that about the tackle situation, because I don't like Tony. I don't like Kenyon Drake. I tell you what, if J.K. Dobbins doesn't play, and I think he will, then I go Kenyon Drake. But I'm going to have to say Mostert and Moss. Moss played a lot more than I thought in the opener, and he seems to be in a timeshare with Singletary, even though Singletary is a much better player. All right, Baby Santa, Batman or A-Rob, half PPR. I own both of these guys on the same team. I have A-Rob in both leagues, and I have another league with Bateman and A-Rod. That's a coin flip. That's honestly a coin flip. The problem with Bateman is he had less than a 70% snap share. He was only at 67%. I'm going to have to go A-Rob. I really think Sean McVay is going to try to get him more involved. The Ravens are very run heavy, and I think they're going to get out on Miami and take the lead because Miami's offensive line is so banged up that they're going to run it. They're not going to be in position to have to throw much or as much. So I would go with Allen Robinson. Keep the faith. Listen, they're playing the Atlanta Falcons. If Allen Robinson bottoms out against the Atlanta Falcons, then you bench him outright. I think he's going to be fine. So I'm going to go Allen Robinson there, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm starting Allen Robinson in both of my leagues. I just lost Elijah, and someone offered me Darrell Henderson for Bateman. Don't do that. Don't do Darrell Henderson for Bateman. Darrell Henderson can't stay healthy. It's only a matter of time before he gets hurt. He cannot handle lion's share carries. We saw him get hurt. Listen, he was great last September, but he wore down under all those carries. He got hurt. He's a smaller back. And Cam Akers, they want to use Cam Akers. I really do believe that the Rams want to get Cam Akers involved. They lost Kyron Williams, so they have to get Akers involved. So I don't like – you hold on to Bateman. I think Bateman is very athletic. He's really the only target other than the tight end there, other than Andrews. So I would not do that trade. Should I pick up DeAndre Carter and flex him instead of the other guys? I would look for Palmer first if he's there. I would, you know what? That's not a bad idea, Extreme Ken. I would pick up DeAndre Carter. I mean, DeAndre Carter is going to be working in the slot, so I think he's going to be targeted heavily. And listen, every freaking game is going to be a shootout in that AFC West. The Chiefs they went batshit crazy, putting points up on the board without Tyreek Hill in Week 1. The Chargers are going to have to pass a lot. No Keenan Allen, all hands on deck. I even like Gerald Everett potentially as a flex. So I would pick up DeAndre Carter. Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson instead of Bateman or A-Rob. I mean, listen, Gibson's being used a lot. I do like Antonio Gibson this week. And you know what's crazy is that the Commanders' offense looks pretty good. You know, Carson Wentz, we all know the story with Carson Wentz. He's an asshole and a coach killer, but, you know, he threw 4 touchdowns. He's got ability if he could just knock the off the field shit off as far as pouting and acting like a baby. But he threw the 4 touchdowns. He did throw the 2 interceptions. That's part of the deal. But this is a passing offense. You got 3 receivers who are very, very potent in McLaurin and Samuel and Dotson. You know, a lot of people ran out to pick Dotson. His target share wasn't anywhere near the other 2, but I understand that because Samuel doesn't stay healthy, so that picking up Dotson was smart. You know what? I actually think I would go Antonio Gibson over those other 2 because he's targeted heavily. This is a converted receiver after all, and he's the number 1 running back until Brian Robinson gets back. 22-man league, yeah, a 22-man roster. That's crazy to have that many guys on a roster. Is that roster or members in the league? Extreme came. I get Gibson for Bateman. Oh, I say Baby Santa. You can get Gibson for Bateman and Madison. Depends who your receivers are. I mean, if Bateman is disposable, and you really need a running back, then yes, I would do that trade. The problem is Brian Robinson is going to come back. He already did some work on the side today, so I think he's going to be back after those 4 weeks. And who knows what that's going to do to Gibson? That's the only issue there. And yeah, 22 person league, Extreme Kane. That's a little crazy if you ask me. But different. It really makes you kind of work the wire and find gems there. Keenan, A-Rob. All right, so you have Keenan, A-Rob, Bateman. Yeah, I mean, you're pretty good there. Well, Keenan Allen's hurt, if that's who you're talking about. You know what? Honestly, I think Bateman's going to be good. No, I don't really. You have D-Hop who's stashed, but he's not coming back for week 6. So I wouldn't do that trade then. No, I would stay pat with Bateman, with Rashad Bateman. right, just lost Elijah Mitchell, some scrambling. I get your scrambling, but I still like Bateman. I don't think your receivers, Keenan Allen, right? That's what we're talking about here? He's hurt, so I wouldn't do that. Some guy offered me a trade. I trade Tua for Breece Hall, and then I can pick up Geno Smith. Yeah, I would do that for sure. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa is not going to put up video game numbers. And like I said, the offensive line is in shambles right now. I would do that. As much as I knocked Breece Hall this summer, and rightfully so, he was completely overdrafted. I think that he's going to get more and more work as the season goes on. And Michael Carter has injury issues as well. So, yeah, I would do that trade for sure. I think Tua Tagovailoa is a borderline guy anyway. So you think I'll roll with Singletary? Oh, you have Singletary and Burkhead. No, you can't roll with those guys. So, yeah, I'm going to flip back then and say, yeah, get Gibson. You can't go with Singletary and Berkman. No way. All right, so DeAndre Swift did not practice. He had an ankle. This I'm concerned about. DeAndre Swift. I'm concerned about DeAndre Swift for a number of reasons. Now, I think if he can get a full season in, DeAndre Swift could be the number one running back in all of fantasy football. He could battle it out with Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley. I think those three are the guys, if I had to bet, Taylor's the easy call, but Barkley and Swift, I think, are two guys that absolutely could be running back ones. The only thing I will say is that since the offensive coordinator was changed with Detroit last year, midway through the season, Swift has not been targeted as heavily, and it's Amon-Ra St. Brown instead, who's now the target whore, if you will, in this offense. So it's no, I don't have Instagram, Extreme Kane. I'm really sorry. I'm on Twitter though, so send me a tweet with the picture of the team at Rotoboss, ROTOBOSS at Rotoboss on Twitter. All right, so send me the picture there. Getting back to DeAndre Swift. They also elevated Justin Jackson. So if the Lions are elevating Justin Jackson, there could be something brewing here. And Jamal Williams has to be picked up now. Now, Jamal Williams is boring as hell. He's 3 yards in a cloud of dust. He's like a glorified David Montgomery, but they use him around the goal line, including week 1 with a healthy Swift. So this is something, and they're playing the Commanders who, the defensive line on paper looks great, but they also were banged up. I'm very concerned about DeAndre Swift already. And this is the problem with DeAndre Swift. He can't ever stay healthy. He's like Aaron Jones. He's like Leonard Fournette, recently Saquon Barkley. And this is why you invest heavily in receivers, in my opinion, at the top of the draft. They say it every year. This one we have to watch closely. All right. And when you elevate Justin Jackson, it sends a bad sign. All right. So Joe, you have Ertz, Etienne, Ayuk, Landry, Taysom Hill. Pick 3, Ertz, Etienne, Ayuk, Landry, Taysom Hill. You got to go Landry for sure. This is a passing offense. I would go Etienne and Ertz. I don't trust Ayuk with Trey Lance yet. I want to see Trey Lance actually do something positive. I'd give him a mulligan for the rain last week for sure. But I would go Ertz, Etienne, and Landry. I think Etienne is going to be fine. James Robinson is a thing. He's going to get his fair share of carries. Was very impressed how James Robinson looked actually coming off the Achilles. But I still think Etienne is going to be a big part of the offense. All right, Griffin wants to know Aaron Jones or Kamara. Aaron Jones. Kamara's banged up. The whole entire Packer offense bombed out in week 1. But they did that last year too in the opener when they got slammed by the Saints and everything was fine. Aaron Jones, especially with how much the receivers struggle with Green Bay, they started using Jones and Dillon on the field together in the second half, and I think we're going to see more of that. So keep the faith with Aaron Jones. All right, Extreme Kane, I will check that out later. Okay, make sure you guys follow me too on Twitter at Rotoboss. All right, Jeff Wilson. So Kyle Shanahan said they're going to go with the hot hand. I'm wildly concerned about this because you have Jordan Mason, who played very well in the preseason. He's got good speed. Tyrion Davis-Price, who they used the draft pick on at LSU. He's more of a power back. Jeff Wilson has done some good things in the past, but if you spent a lot of fab money on Wilson, that might not have been money well placed. Now, listen, I picked him up before the game started as a hedge in case Mitchell got hurt in my handcuff running back strategy, which is something you should all do. Make sure you watch that video I posted earlier today on how to handle it this week. But it just goes to show you, based on what Shanahan said, don't automatically throw Wilson in that flex spot or running back too, even worse, until we get a better idea of how this is going to go. It could very well be a timeshare. And also Deebo Samuel is still there, and he's going to get his carries too. Trey wants to know full PPR redraft. Ertz versus the Raiders or Taysom Hill? I've gotten this question 3 times already. Ertz, if he's healthy, you got to go Ertz. A lot of passing in this game. The Raiders can't run it. They're going to throw it. The Cardinals, they could not run it last week either. They got bottled up by the Chiefs. They're going to throw it a lot. Ertz had the touchdown and the 2-point conversion in week 1. He's always a threat around the goal line. You got to go Ertz there. All right, Michael Pittman was limited with a quad today. This was a little bit disconcerting. He was limited, so the fact that he, when you're limited on a Wednesday, that usually means you're going to play. If you don't practice on Wednesday, like the next guy I'm going to talk about, then it's trouble. And that person I'm talking about that didn't practice on Wednesday was George Kittle. He's still battling the groin. It's definitely an issue for me that Kittle still hasn't kicked this groin injury. And you shouldn't have drafted Kittle in the first place. I spent every year telling you not to bother. That's now 14 missed games over the last 3 seasons plus 1 game. That's a lot of missed time. Could be 15. He may not play this week. So you might have to dial up, Gerald Everett, although he plays tomorrow, Evan Engram, stay away from David Njoku. God, that was a disaster. Only 1 catch. But, it's not looking good already. So Najee Harris said he was limited today. He said the foot's fine. He didn't really address it, which is concerning. Nobody has mentioned Lisfranc, but it's definitely the Lisfranc. If they're not talking about it, it's definitely the Lisfranc. And I tweeted it out this morning. I said, you just get the feeling, you just get the sense that it's all going to go to shit this year for Najee Harris. It's just going to go for shit. I told you not to draft him. A Lisfranc injury, whether you're a basketball player, whether you're a football player, is murder on an athlete. There's just constant pain every time you take a step. And if you have to push off like a running back does, this is a huge problem. Jaylen Warren should not be on the waiver wire in any league. I think it's only a matter of time until Najee Harris winds up injured and misses time. I already spoke about how I think he's only going to catch about 40 passes this year as opposed to the 70-plus a year ago. Mitch Trubisky, for all his faults, he likes to throw the ball down the field. His average per pass is pretty impressive. So there's not going to be those dump-offs like you're used to seeing with Ben Roethlisberger. All right, Mike Evans had his calf taped up at practice. It's Jenna Lane of ESPN says it's minor, nothing to see here. There's been a lot of soft tissue injuries in Mike Evans. I don't know if he doesn't hydrate enough or he doesn't drink enough water, but it just seems like this is the same thing with Mike Evans every year, but he plays through it. And if you want a good bet to lead the entire NFL in touchdown catches once again this season, Mike Evans has to be near the top. I mean, he's that good around the goal line. He right there with Jamar Chase and A.J. Brown as prime red zone TD potential receivers. All right, check out your Twitter. I'd like you to know if I should start Juju. Yeah, you start Juju Smith-Schuster every week. That's not even a debate. I love Juju Smith-Schuster. I wasn't able to get him on any of my leagues, which kind of pissed me off. But I do love Juju. All right, J.K. Dobbins practice in full today. He's good to go. He's coming back. Justice Hill and Kenyon Drake handled the duties last year, not Mike Davis. If you started Mike Davis, man, you were in a world of hurt. But he was moving, cutting well, according to the beat reporter there that covered practice. So Dobbins will be back. Kenyon Drake is going to handle the passing down duties. Dobbins catching the ball. While I think he could develop into a decent receiver because he did some of that in college, that's not part of his fantasy football upside. You're going to get first and second downs from Dobbins. Drake is going to be there on third downs. So in the standard league, you could put Dobbins back out there. In a PPR league, I wouldn't start him even in a flex. He's probably not going to get a full allotment of snaps, so I'd still wait another week before you get back in bed with J.K. Dobbins. All right, Wan'Dale Robinson did not practice with the knee. It was a real shame. I was really curious to see what they were going to do with Wan'Dale Robinson. Sterling Shepard had a good game with the long touchdown pass. Kadarius Toney, I spoke earlier, he's in the doghouse. If you own Kadarius Toney, I'd almost drop him if it's a deeper league. He only got 2 carries, was hardly on at all in terms of passing downs. Really was not a factor at all. And Kenny Galladay had a couple of catches. He's washed too. It's really going to be the Sterling Shepard show, which is really not saying much, at least until Wan'Dale Robinson gets back. All right, Mac Jones practiced fully. You don't want any part of this New England offense. Now, Ty Montgomery is not going to be here. He's out for the next 4 games. He's went on the injured list. I'm hoping that jump starts from Ramondre Stevenson, who laid an egg week 1 And I was very high, like everybody else. We all love Ramondre Stevenson because even Bill Belichick hints at how he wants to get him heavily involved. He's a very impressive runner. He's got very good speed, very capable as a receiver. But I think this Patriots offense is so goddamn bad that it's going to swallow up everybody. I wouldn't, whether it's Jacoby Myers, Damian Harris, even Ramondre Stevenson this week, I'm not starting any Patriot offensive player. All right, Alan Lazard returned to practice. I told you all to trade for Alan Lazard this week. I traded for him. I traded Melvin Gordon for Alan Lazard right as the games ended on Sunday because I want to get him before he comes back into action. Alan Lazard is going to be very heavily targeted by Aaron Rodgers. He's going to come back. He missed the game with the ankle. He was stepped on in practice last week. Aaron Rodgers has no patience right now for the rookie receivers on Green Bay. He's going to welcome Alan Lazard back with open arms. He's going to pepper him with throws. I also think Robert Tonyan is going to pick up steam as well. So if you need a tight end, Robert Tonyan I would pick up. I can't wait to see what Alan Lazard does this week. All right, I mentioned T. Higgins earlier. It looks like he's going to be able to pass concussion protocol. He's going to return against Dallas. He was on his way to a decent game with the 2 catches early on before he suffered the concussion. I think Higgins is going to be just fine. The one thing I will say about the Bengals, that offensive line still looks atrocious. I mean, with all the money and the draft capital they spent on that offensive line this past offseason, it didn't look any different. The first time Burrow goes back to pass, he gets sacked. 4 turnovers, I think it was 5, 4 interceptions and a fumble, 1 lost fumble. So Joe Burrow was a mess. But what I will say this about Joe Burrow, he doesn't hide. He doesn't go into a shell and hide. He fights to the last possession. I mean, listen, I'll go to war any day of the week with Joe Burrow. He never gives up. He continues to fight even though things are not going well. If Higgins doesn't play, Tyler Boyd is definitely worth the flex, but I think Higgins is going to be out there. All right, Michael Gallup not going to return this week. I dropped Michael Gallup. I had him stashed on the IR. With Dak Prescott injured, I just dropped Gallup. I want no part of any of the Cowboy offensive players, including Tony Pollard, including Ezekiel Elliott. Dalton Schultz, maybe just because Cooper Rush is going to want to focus in on a safety valve, and I think Dalton Schultz can be that guy. But other than Dalton Schultz, I want no Dallas Cowboys in my lineups. All right, Brian Robinson did some work on the side, so he's aiming to be back week 5. I think he could do that for coming back from the gunshot wounds. What this means for Antonio Gibson, I guess the next 3 weeks are going to be telling. If Gibson can kill it like he did in week 1, then maybe he holds off Brian Robinson other than yielding goal line work. If not, he starts fumbling again, then Robinson has a chance to get more carries. All right, I talked about the Miami offensive line, both tackles, Terron Armstead and Austin Jackson. Mike McDaniel, the new coach, would not commit to playing either one. And if both those tackles are out, Tua Tagovailoa is going to be under a lot of pressure, and Chase Edmonds is not going to have a lot of room to run. And truth be told, Edmonds really wasn't that great in the opener. I own Edmonds in one league, and I really wasn't impressed by him. So the Miami offensive line going against a ferocious Baltimore defense, that's going to be trouble. I would still start Edmonds, but it may not go well. That's for sure, especially for the passing attack. All right, Chris Godwin did not practice. He's probably going to miss this week, maybe next week as well. So goddamn frustrating as a double Godwin owner. I love the 7-8 round ADP he was carrying in the summer. I'm like, you know what? If he comes back week 3, sits out week 1 and 2, recovers fully or more fully from last year's torn ACL, I'm good to go with Chris Godwin. But you know what? It was medical malpractice. It was team malpractice putting him out there in week 1, and then of course the hamstring injury. Just a horrible, horrible development for Godwin and his fantasy football owners like myself. So I was pretty ticked off about that. All right, make sure you're posting questions, guys. I know we got a lot of questions early on. I just went through the injury report. So I want to talk about tomorrow, Thursday night, the Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. There's going to be a lot of passing in this game, as you would expect from a Justin Herbert, from Patrick Mahomes. It's going to be an aerial show in the AFC West throughout the season. All right, this is how it's going to be. You saw Devontae Adams go nuclear with Derek Carr. You saw Russell Wilson prop up Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton now that Drew Lock is no longer in town. Javonte Williams, all those catches. The passing is going to be ridiculous. And even though Keenan Allen's out, and that's a big missed opportunity for Keenan Allen owners, Mike Williams is going to go nuts this week. I'm totally think he absolutely lock it in. He's going to go for 80 plus yards and probably a touchdown, five catches at least, maybe more. I wouldn't be surprised by that either. DeAndre Carter is going to be in the slot. I'm fine with DeAndre Carter in 5 receiver leagues and maybe as a flex, double flex, deeper leagues there. But Josh Palmer, it was a quiet game for him, but he ran the second most routes. When Keenan Allen went out behind Mike Williams, and it was a quiet game for Mike Williams too. I think they're going to get both involved this week. They have to. They have no choice. You start Mike Williams, obviously. You start Josh Palmer in the flex. DeAndre Carter, I talked about if it's a 5 receiver league or a double flex, then you could put him out there. Gerald Everett. Listen, Gerald Everett was pretty good in week 1. And for Gerald Everett, the athleticism is there. He's got good hands. He just makes boneheaded mistakes. He fumbles. He runs the wrong route. Seems very lackadaisical at times. But Justin Herbert was targeting him at a fairly decent clip, and I think he will tomorrow as well. So you start all of those guys. Obviously, you're starting Austin Eckler. It was a dud of a week 1 for Eckler, who I thought was overpriced. It was almost like Austin Eckler fell into that number 3 spot in drafts almost by default, behind CMC, behind Jonathan Taylor. But if you drafted today, you would take Saquon Barkley over him. Absolutely, for sure. You might even take DeAndre Swift over him prior to him getting injured. But, Eckler, I think ultimately will be okay. But all those touchdowns he scored a year ago, I said was not going to be in the cards this year. He'll catch his 65, 70 to 75 passes, rush for, 800 plus yards and post, 600 plus receiving yards, which is very good numbers. But I never thought that was worth the number 3 spot in the draft. And here's the other thing. I don't think he's going to make it through the season healthy. I can't see Eckler staying fully healthy for the second season in a row with his smallish frame, with him openly admitting that it would be a good idea if the Chargers brought in a better backup and they tried with Isaiah Spiller. This is something the Chargers have been blowing for years. They have not been able to find a backup running back, to help spell Eckler. He's a smaller back, taking the hits. He was nicked up a lot last year. Give him credit. He fought through it. He played. I think he only missed the 1 game with COVID. He fought through it, and he stayed on the field. So that's great. But I just can't see it for the second time this year. I had a chance to draft him 4th overall in one of my leagues. I passed on him for Justin Jefferson. Looks pretty good now. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. All right, one thing at a time. I'll get to that next about the receivers. For the Chiefs, obviously you're starting Travis Kelce. You're starting Juju Smith-Schuster. You're starting Patrick Mahomes. I think you got to start Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think it was a little fluky the way, he caught the 2 touchdown passes. Jerick McKinnon is going to be involved in the passing attack. Ronald Jones is a non-factor. Isaiah Pacheco wasn't really involved until the game got out of hand, so I think CEH is going to hold him off. But you do pick up Pacheco if you have an extra spot on your bench and hold him throughout the game. And if, CEH makes it through the game okay, then you drop Pacheco. I think you do that. Macaulay Hardman, I wouldn't start him. He had 3 catches for 16 yards. I know he scored, but I don't think you don't start Sky Moore. MVS, maybe if it's a 5 receiver league, you start MVS, but it's really just Juju, Kelce, CEH, and Mahomes on the Chiefs side. All right, now, as far as the receivers, I said this during draft season. If you had the number 1 pick, you go Jonathan Taylor. Anything but the number 1 pick, you go receiver in the first round. And I want you all to remember this next year. Look what happened in week 1. Justin Jefferson went nuts. Devontae Adams went nuts. Stephon Diggs went nuts. Jamar Chase went nuts. Cooper Kupp went nuts. Those are the 5 receivers that went in the first round of the majority of fantasy football drafts this year. In PPR leagues, all 5 of those guys balled out. I mean, they went absolutely nuts. All of them are more than returning profit to their owners who used a first-round pick on them. Now, how about the running backs? Yeah, Saquon Barkley was late first-round pick. Looks great so far. Austin Eckler busted out week 1. Derrick Henry wasn't very impressive week 1. He's another one. Christian McCaffrey, number 2 overall. He scored the touchdown, but that's all he did. It was an absolute dud. And that Carolina offensive line is fucking horrible. He's not going to find any room. Speaking of horrible offensive lines, Najee Harris, he didn't do anything as well. DeAndre Swift at the end of the first round, early second round, all right, he did fine. Aaron Jones, he didn't do well. And then I'm not even talking about the injury factor. Every year, running backs get hurt. They turn out to be busted draft picks. You spend all that draft capital in the first round, and then you have a situation with Christian McCaffrey a year ago, or Derrick Henry, or Saquon Barkley, or DeAndre Swift, and they go out injured, and you're screwed because you lost your first-round pick. You got to get that first-round pick right. Next year, always go receiver with your first-round pick. Round 2, go the running back. The league, I took Justin Jefferson fourth. I was able to get Leonard Fournette in the second round. And your running back 2 spot, I saw somebody else post this on Twitter, should be your weakest spot in the field. I totally agree. You can mix and match that running back 2 spot throughout the course of the year. There's always running back injuries where handcuffs, backups like Jeff Wilson maybe this week, like Khalil Herbert eventually, that accrue very impressive, very good, potent fantasy football value in the middle of a season. You don't get that at receiver. Very rarely do you get a receiver in the middle of the year that you could pick up and he supplies every week, potent top end production. You just don't see it. So that's why I always tell you, draft receivers early. All right, those who are just jumping in, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Bop the like button as well. If you hit the like button, that really helps with the indexing with the show too. Now, as far as the rest of the week, I do have the live stream on Friday. We're going to go over all of the injury news because Friday's the big day for practice. If a player doesn't practice on Friday, he's unlikely to play. 90% of the time, if they don't practice Friday, they don't play. And, of course, I'm going to take your questions on Friday. Start and sit on Friday as well. I'll be doing that. I'll start posting the start-sit videos as we go forward. Joe B, are you concerned about DJ Moore? Not at all. Not at all. I did say that it is possible when a new quarterback comes in that they develop a rapport with the non-obvious receiver, in this case, Robbie Anderson. But DJ Moore is just way too good not to ball out. So I'm not concerned about it. As a matter of fact, I would try to buy low on him. Go to that owner who owns DJ Moore and be like, hey, listen, Baker Mayfield really loves Robbie Anderson. What do you think? Trade me DJ Moore. I'll take him off your hands. I would do that. Now some guys I wouldn't buy low on. Trey Lance, I'm not buying low on. I do give Trey Lance a mulligan for week 1 because of that monsoon. But even before the rains got really bad in the second half, he really wasn't playing well. I'm not buying low on anybody with Dallas. Not buying low on CeeDee Lamb. I mean, I know Lamb will be fine, potentially fine when Prescott gets back, but we don't even know if Dak Prescott's finger, he's going to be able to grip the ball adequately and the numbers are going to flow like they would if he was healthy. So I'm not sure about that as well. But anyway, I started to say the rest of the week, I'm going to do the stream on Friday, the stream on Sunday. And for those, again, who are new, Sunday's a very busy day because I started with Damian Williams and went through Keenan Allen, Elijah Mitchell. As soon as those guys went down injured, I had a video posted within a minute. And then that Sunday night came back on with the live stream, went over all the games, all of the happenings, the injuries, the big performances, the duds. And then Monday starts the crisis point videos, the guys who are really let down, their owners who are struggling, the numbers aren't there. I post those crisis point videos, and they're pretty popular. And then each week, of course, I'm going to do the handcuff running back videos to tell you which backs to pick up during which games, and then when to drop them and all that good stuff. The start and sits, I'm going to post the quarterback start sit probably tomorrow morning, and then the running back, receivers, tight ends as well. So all that's going to be coming on a daily basis. So this channel is new. Like I said, I started it, a little over a month ago, and we're almost at 350 subscribers. And also, for those who don't know me, I ran a website for 15 years at fantasysportsboss.com. Stopped doing that, wanted to transfer over to this. I think it's much easier to do the YouTube channel than it is for the website. And so that's why. And also, you always got to look for my draft guides. I do every year a fantasy football draft guide available on Amazon. Every year I do a NFL scouting prospects draft guide that's also available on Amazon. Joe, thanks for doing these streams. Really cool to get feedback real time and hear other questions. See you Friday. Yes, Joe B, that's the whole point. I'm glad you mentioned this, to get feedback. I've seen it on Twitter. A lot of pundits on Twitter get questions one right after the other, and they don't answer them. And I know the frustration because I used to be in the audience as well, asking questions of guys and not getting any responses. And it is frustrating. You just want an answer. I'm going to answer you at worst at some point during the day, by the end of the day, if not within the hour. A lot of times I answer within a minute. I get alerts on my phone. I set the notifications. If somebody asks me a question, I immediately go on and answer as quickly as I can. A lot of times it's within a minute. Most of the time it's within the hour. The worst case scenario, it's by the end of the day. So Joe, thank you for mentioning that. I hear everybody out. I'm always at the beck and call. You could drop me a message post in the comments. You could drop me a message on Twitter at RotoBoss. I'm always available if you have questions. All right. And again, any major storyline, I'm going to come on here with analysis, with videos, all that stuff. I'm trying to separate myself from the rest of the industry in terms of being available, being on top of everything. I know there's apps out there that give you the, like Fantasy Life, that give you the as soon as a guy starts holding his knee, they fire off a tweet. That's great, but there's no analysis. So when I see the guy go down injured, I take the extra 30 seconds. I analyze it, what this means, who's the next man up, and then I post it. So I try to go the extra mile with this. So, and also with this chat, I do the live streams probably 4 times a week, and I use this chat as an opportunity to get questions from you guys. So again, keep firing the questions. And the only thing I ask in return is subscribe, hit the notification, and hit the like button. The like button helps me get indexed higher in YouTube, so the more likes I have, the better. I'm still less than 350 subscribers, so I'm trying to build it up as quickly as I can. A lot of the people that used to follow me on the website haven't followed me here. I wish I had saved some sort of a mailing list so I could get a hold of all those people, because we used to have thousands of views every day. Bad job on my part. I would have been able to try to get this boosted even higher, but I'm also going to be working on trying to get guests on. I still have not heard back from Maurice Jones-Drew. I had traded. He did message me originally a few weeks ago that he would be interested in coming on, but then I sent a follow-up and I've heard nothing. So it is what it is. I'm going to try to get him on. I know Maurice Jones-Drew is very big in fantasy. Matthew Berry, I took a shot at the moon and tried to get him on. I didn't hear anything. I didn't expect to. I mean, he's got and by the way, what do you guys think of Matthew Berry's show on NBC Sports Edge? I started watching it. Listen, Matthew Berry is the pioneer. Everybody who goes into this business wants to be Matthew Berry. All the props to him. He's made himself into this industry titan. Also, his wife is hot as hell. I mean, he hit it out of the park there. And the guy was in freaking Marvel the Avengers. So, I mean, who's got it better than Matthew Berry? So all the props to him. His show is pretty good. It's a little repetitive, but I do like it. I do think it's pretty good. I think it's hysterical that he's drinking and getting himself bombed, because it is called Happy Hour, Matthew Berry. I think it's hysterical that he's drinking during the show. But if there's anything else that you guys want to see on the channel, make sure you let me know. Drop a thought. Somebody said today, go on TikTok. I've never been on TikTok in my life. I know what it is. I have 2 kids. One's a preteen and just starting to get into that. I know nothing about TikTok. Somebody said that it would really elevate the channel. I don't know how that is. If somebody could explain that to me, that would be great. I thought TikTok was really just dancing, like people acting like fools. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But so that's why I'm going to try to grow that as well. And then when my draft guides come out, I'm going to let you guys know that as well, so you can pick up the draft guides. They're going to be available on Amazon and also Barnes & Noble. I have licensing deals with both of them. So anyway, are there any other questions before I jump off this stream here? So I think we covered it pretty much all. Like I said, tomorrow, all hands on deck. And the thing about Thursday games, it can be very frustrating, is if your players suck on Thursday, like Allen Robinson last week, like me in both leagues, I started him in both of my leagues. It makes you feel like, oh crap, I'm so far behind and I have no chance to win. And that was my thought process. I was projected to lose both of my leagues by a significant margin after starting with Allen Robinson and going against Cooper Kupp in one of the leagues. I was able to rally in both. I'm 1-0 in both of my leagues because you know what? You can't lose it on Thursday. All right. It might look bad, but if your guys ball out on Sunday, like mine did, like Michael Pittman did on one league, Jonathan Taylor in another league went crazy. Lamar Jackson, I own in both leagues. He did very well himself. So always keep the faith. All right. So anyway, all right. I think that's it for today, guys. Share out the stream if you can. I will see you guys on Friday. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBoss. Hit the subscribe button. We will talk soon.